Hi, I'm Ellie Griffin. I'm mum to Zach. He's the middle of three boys. He's got an older brother, Harry, and a younger brother, Finley. Zach's 7 years old and he was born with a rare syndrome called CFC syndrome, and he has another diagnosis of autism as well, and he has very high needs. And since he was born, I've gone on a very challenging yet exciting journey, and I've done some really great learning. The start of Zach's life was really difficult. It was unexpected, it was challenging, and because I'd grown up in a society where disability isn't valued as much as it should, it's not seen as a type of diversity or anything like that, then I think I was in shock that I myself ended up with a child who was disabled. And so it was a very difficult first few years. It was a very lonely journey. I felt isolated. I was really pleased that I found Parent to Parent because I got to meet other parents and I gained support there, and I found camaraderie, and the journey became a little bit less lonely. But the learning extended from there as well, in that I took some study through Massey and I started to learn more about disability and to learn more about the social model of disability in particular. And that is that the challenges that people who live with disability face are not so much to do with the impairment that they were born with, but with all the challenges that society throws their way, whether it be lack of resources, accessibility, fragmented services, or just people's attitudes. And I think once I'd learned the social model, I could move on from there, and that was really empowering for me. And I know for our family in particular, and for Zach, the greatest challenges that we face are not because Zach was born with CFC syndrome, although there are challenges that come with that, but the greatest challenges are what we have to face as a result of that because of what's not in society, or the attitudes that people have, or what resources are difficult for us to get, and what challenges we face in mainstreaming and all those sorts of things. So from there, I've gone on to join things like the Western Bay of Plenty Disability Support Trust, which has been also great learning for me. Great bunch of people, some people who have worked within the disability sector for years, so some great networking opportunities, and it's good to be able to be a part of a group that can be a voice for families and for the disabled community. I like being in the Western Bay of Plenty Disability Support Trust because I feel that in some small way it enables me to have a voice for families, because I really think that if families didn't have to face all of these endless issues that I don't believe we should have to face, then we can just get on with the job of parenting and enjoying our kids. And obviously that's not going to be something that's achieved overnight, but just to be able to chip away in some small way at being a voice for families, representing families in some way, trying to get good information out there. And one thing the Trust does, which I think is a brilliant initiative, are the Networking for Inclusion seminars, which is where we're really trying to get the proper, correct information out there. And in particular at the moment it's about the new model of disability, trying to get everybody working on the same page for the benefit of people who live with disability and for families of people who live with disability. And another avenue we're taking at the moment is the Tauranga City Council Disability Strategy, which has been a long time coming. We're trying to get them to take more ownership of that and provide more funding for some of those initiatives, along with other organisations in the community as well. So I find it, for me personally, and because I'm fortunate enough to have the time and energy to do it at the moment, I find it really empowering to be a part of an organisation like that. I think one thing I really like about this project is, like I said earlier, for me, it was a very lonely journey when my son was born, and wondering, living day to day and wondering what the heck was going on and how we were going to get there. And I think being able to meet with other parents and exchange stories and provide support for one another, and sort of that camaraderie that came from that, from people who genuinely knew what it was like as well, not completely, but many of the same challenges that we all face, that gave me strength. So I really like this project, that you can film some really positive stories and that they can be in a place where people can access them when they need to. And yeah, that's why I like this project. One of the great things that we're trying to bring into the Networking for Inclusion seminars is trying to get personal stories from other families who have used the new model, whether it's enhanced individualised funding or they've perhaps made contact with an LAC, and that's been really helpful. And I think those stories are really useful because there's a whole lot of information at the moment, and it's really hard, enhanced individualised funding. If I hire someone, how does that work? How do I find people? All those sorts of things. So I think hearing stories from other families or from other people who live with disability where it's worked is really helpful, it's useful, it's practical information. So we're hoping that some future Networking for Inclusion seminars will have those stories as well. I think part of the new model that I'm excited about is some of the initiatives around community living, because I think for a parent of a child with very high needs, you worry what happens if your child outlives you. Because I know that my son, he won't be able to live independently. So some of these new community living initiatives and hearing stories, positive stories around those, that's really empowering for me, because it's a hugely frightening prospect, something that keeps me awake some nights. So knowing that there's going to be options out there that are going to enable some really good lives, as opposed to perhaps some of the traditional options that have been available, I find a lot of hope in that.